Hello and welcome to the Third Sector Podcast. I'm Andy Ricketts.
And I'm Lucinda Rouse. Each week we bring you half an hour of discussion and debate about the important goings-on in the charity world. In this episode... Hello, Andy!
There we go.
We got him! We follow Andy as he completes mile after painful mile of this year's TCS London Marathon. No, we're not really going to do that, but it was great to catch you at about mile 3 of the route, Andy. How did you find it?
Well, it was very hot. It was very amazing. It was very tough. I was very glad to get to the finish. And it was very nice to see you cheering me on at mile 3 when I was feeling relatively fresh at that point. It was an incredible experience and I was very glad to be part of it. The second time I've done the marathon. Timing wise, didn't go quite as well as the previous years. It was really busy on the course and obviously the temperature was really difficult.
Excuses.
I know. And then a big blister at 14 miles put paid to my time targets. But it was an incredible experience and I'm glad to have done it again.
Well, hats off to you. It's not something you will ever catch me doing, though it is the most fantastic event. No, today we're here to find out what it's like to be the 2025 Charity of the Year for the London Marathon.
And this year, the charity in question was Pancreatic Cancer UK. And we're joined in the studio by Victoria Askew, the charity's Senior Marketing Campaign Manager. Hi, Vicky. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Now, you were aiming to raise £2 million and your fundraising page is formally closed at the end of May. How are things looking?
Yeah, pretty good. We've absolutely smashed target and currently a little over 2.8 million.
That's absolutely brilliant. And what does it actually mean to be Charity of the Year at the London Marathon?
Well, for us, it was an unprecedented opportunity. Pancreatic Cancer UK is the smallest charity to have ever been awarded the partnership. So the scale of the opportunity for us was a tremendous one. And we wanted to make the absolute most of it. We set ourselves, in addition to the £2 million fundraising target, we set out to meaningfully engage 1 million people. We defined that as 1 million people taking a positive action of some kind as a result of our marathon campaign. But we have just thrown ourselves into it completely wholeheartedly, absolutely determined to make the most of it in every possible way.
Great. Well, really happy to have you here and to spend the next 20 minutes or so going through the different ways that you made the most of it. Mm-hmm. So to get us started, the application process, can you tell us what it involved and how and why you think you were successful?
Yeah, sure. So we actually applied 4 times to be the TCS London Marathon Charity of the Year. A couple of times we made it through to the final round and were so close, but never quite made it. And then finally, for the 2025 partnership, we used learnings from our previous applications to adjust our approach, and we onboarded an agency as well to help us come up with a really strong, really meaningful proposition that we were sure that London Marathon wouldn't turn down. It was during that process that we came up with the ultimate test as a really strong campaign and proposition. And I think ultimately that is what clinched it for us this time around.
And what was the ultimate test?
So the ultimate test essentially was our umbrella campaign that spanned all of our marathon comms. And it put forward this incredible idea that by taking on a physical test of human endurance, i.e. running the marathon, that would inspire scientific breakthrough for the ultimate test for early detection of pancreatic cancer. Early detection research has been so central to our messaging. It's given people something really tangible to think about. And the reality is that it genuinely does stand to make a huge difference and save lives. And there's such a link there between the test of running a marathon and the emotional weight of that as well, and then delivering a life-saving early detection test.
So can you just talk a little bit about what the application process entailed, just kind of stepping back a little?
So you submit an initial application, and then if successful, you're invited to pitch. And then if you're successful from that round, you're invited to pitch again, and there's a bit more of a in-depth, thorough Q&A. It's after that they make the decision.
Did you know?
So there's 4 rounds altogether.
Yeah, and did you know how many charities you were kind of up against in the final stage, and did you even know who they were?
No, it's all very secretive, actually. And I understand why. So we were told that we were the 2025 Charity of the Year in the summer of 2023. And then at that point, Samaritans was really getting into the thick of it with their campaign as the Charity of the Year for 2024. Lots of NDAs have to be signed, especially when you're starting to like onboard suppliers and contractors as you start to prep for launch. And I think the rationale behind that is really to make sure that the incumbent Charity of the Year gets their moment in the spotlight. Although there's always like questions and people are wondering who might have got it. Although I don't think actually we were on anybody's radar, particularly this year, probably because of our size. But yes, so it's all very, very hush-hush. You don't really know who the final candidates are.
And they don't announce the actual winner publicly, do they, until the several days after the previous year's marathon has just
That's
taken
correct.
place?
Yeah, that's correct. So we were announced as the 2025 partner about 3 days after.
And what does it mean for the charity in terms of running places and that kind of thing?
We had our usual 150 charity places that we would purchase in any given year. And then we also had an extra 250 Charity of the Year places. And, you know, the income from that is huge. So such a great opportunity. And then obviously that was never going to be enough for us. We wanted to really make sure we could truly be the biggest, loudest, strongest team on the day. So we had a really well thought out recruitment plan to onboard as many ballot place or own place runners as possible too.
So you found out that you were the charity partner 18 months before the marathon itself. Could you tell us a bit about the preparation phase? How many of you were working full time on this project, and how did you make sure that all the right parts of the charity were talking to each other and working together?
My colleague Lauren and I have worked very closely in tandem with each other on this project. So Lauren is senior events manager, and our roles have been focused purely on the partnership and nothing else for the last 18 months. I'm a very strong believer that fundraising and marcoms are just different sides of the same coin. I think the work that we've done and the way we've worked together has really demonstrated that. My role has been very specifically focused on the marketing and communications, so spanning media, digital, brand, content and asset creation. We've got a phenomenal engagement marketing comms team at Pancreatic Cancer UK who have all played a part in delivering this with me. It's definitely worth mentioning that this has definitely been a cross-organisational project that has pulled in every aspect of the charity in one way or another. At the very, very beginning, so this must have been at least 6 months before announcing the partnership publicly, we looked at the project holistically and then created a series of work streams across the organisation that would feed in to ensure that we reached and beat our targets. So within those work streams were stakeholders from across the organisation who were all contributing in different ways. So for example, we've obviously had a heavy reliance on our data team to make sure that that side of things is running smoothly, and a partnerships team who was involved in securing things like match funding from foundations and high net worth supporters. So we've had to really pull in people from across the organisation, and the workstream approach really helped us with that. And then sat above those work streams was a core steering group. So that was with mainly SLT and Lauren and myself. And that steering group has really sort of ensured that we've consistently led this project in unison.
Then in terms of the stewardship of the runners themselves, what did this involve, and what did you find worked particularly well over the course of your time?
We've always found that having a really personalised, tailored approach to stewardship ultimately is what increases income. We had a really thorough, really broad approach to our stewardship. So the usual things like obviously email journeys, SMS journeys, phone calls, social communities. I think it's worth saying out of all of these, we particularly found that our SMS journeys did really well. The messages were designed to really get the runners engaging with us and talking to us, and some would be very, very simple and might even just ask, "Hi, how's your training going?" And we had a really great response rate and a great conversation rate, and I think it sort of just reminded our runners that we were really there for them. The phone calls as well were also really well received. So our runners received 4 calls during their journey. So, the very first call to offer them their place, check-in calls in January and March, and then good luck calls in April. And then big social communities as well. So we had a Facebook group, a WhatsApp community that was split into different groups. So runners had different places to ask very specific questions. It all helped to build a sense of community. It was a nice way for runners to support each other through their grief, in addition to their training and fundraising.
Really interesting that it's the lower tech ones that you've particularly highlighted, the SMS and the phone calls, as a way of maintaining engagement and getting a really great response. I understand as well that you've had some really high tech solutions and ways of engaging. And could you tell us a bit about how you've made use of AI videos?
Yeah, sure. So this is something we tried for the very first time quite early on in the partnership. As I've mentioned already, we had a big focus on trying to recruit as many ballot place runners as possible. But for people who aren't familiar with the process, it's an extremely competitive environment to get ballot place runners to support you. At the time of application for a place in the ballot, an applicant would select up to 6 charities that they may like to run for. And then if they're successful, then all of those charities are sort of, for want of a better word, competing against each other for that runner to run for them. So we had a task on our hands of really trying to achieve that cut through, really trying to get their attention and try something quite innovative and new. So we used a company called Idamu to help us produce these really very, very cool videos. Essentially, these videos encapsulated all of our key messages, but they were personalised to the recipient. So, for example, the video would feature a London bus going by, and it would say, "Let's go," and it would have the runner's name on the side, or a running vest with their name on it, or their lights up on Piccadilly Circus.
So cool.
So yeah, it was really, really fun, and definitely something that we would use again.
How well received was that? Because I feel like I'd be a bit freaked out if I saw that.
It was really well received, actually. We got 94 runners on board with us as a result of that campaign, which is great. I would say that it was certainly not something we did in isolation. We still used very traditional techniques to market ourselves to own place runners, so incentive campaigns and competitions, for example. But the video was definitely worthwhile.
And then in terms of the charity runners that you have that have places through you, they have a target, I think, of like £2,500, don't they, in terms of what they have to raise?
Yes.
I know this isn't your core area because you're not so much on the fundraising side, but I know other charities struggle with this area. What was your approach to those runners that weren't hitting their targets?
Okay, well, actually, something else that we did for the very first time this year was we built an API to get live donations data from Enthuse and Just Giving, and this allowed us to segment our stewardship with real-time fundraising totals, and I suppose like tailor our communications a bit better. So previously our donations data was 2 to 3 weeks out of date, so we couldn't really see the direct impact of any fundraising communications that we'd sent out. But this way it allowed us to see live totals and see who was or wasn't struggling, so we could push those who were already doing amazing work, we could push them to do more, and also we could chase those who were yet to start their fundraising journey and try to provide them with support they needed. But yes, we did have targets in place, and we would try our very best to help runners who weren't off the ground with their fundraising. But ultimately, the charity places do cost us money. I suppose in the public misconstrued, I think everybody thinks that the charity places are given for free. That's not the case. Charities have to purchase every place, with the exception of the ballot place ones, of course. That's a huge financial outlay. So we do have a responsibility to ensure that our fundraisers are fundraising. So if people were still on zero and weren't meeting fundraising targets, we would have to have difficult conversations with them about whether or not we needed to get them to hang up their running vest, so to speak.
And did that happen? I mean, did any runners lose their place as a result of that?
A couple. I couldn't give you the exact figures, but yes. But we're very fortunate that we had such a huge number of charity applications, and we had, thousands of people on the waiting list, so we could easily fill those back up.
I'd like to move on now to your Shoes of Hope initiative as something completely new that you did. And just to set the scene for that, I would like to play the video, which unfortunately our listeners won't be able to see, but I think the audio itself is highly evocative.
Dad, my role model, my inspiration and my motivation. You're with me on every run and never forgotten.
A wonderful wife, mother, daughter, friend and colleague who was super proud of her best time at the London Marathon.
Every shoe represents a person. It's quite hard-hitting when you look around and realise how many that is.
As you read the dedications, it's incredibly moving. People and families touched by pancreatic cancer.
So the trainers are dedicated to my father. He passed away in 2017, 15 minutes before the day before the marathon. And one of the last things he said was, make sure that you run and make sure that you raise the money.
Dedicated to my husband, Jeremy George Taylor, who loved to run and had he lived longer, would have done all he could to fight this disease. Let's do it for him and all the others.
Powerful stuff.
Yes, and that video is still available to watch on the Pancreatic Cancer UK website and on all of your socials as well, isn't it? So
That's right.
Vicky, could you tell us what we were looking at there?
Shoes of Hope was Pancreatic Cancer UK's first ever proper PR stunt, our very first public installation. And essentially it was a very beautiful, very moving, very poignant public display of 797 pairs of running shoes to represent the 797 lives that are lost to pancreatic cancer every month in the UK. All of those shoes, every single pair, were donated by people who have lost loved ones to pancreatic cancer, and they had very beautiful dedication notes attached to the laces. And it was also a really unique, quite lovely way, I think, to give supporters an opportunity to contribute in a very different, in a very meaningful way. It was a huge project. It was something that in itself was an 11-month piece of work. We were very, very proud of what it achieved.
And those 797 trainers' running shoes were laid out just on the South Bank on the Thames, right next to Tower Bridge. What did you get from that PR stunt?
It achieved more or less blanket coverage, and it afforded us our best ever performing social media content. We had such huge media interest. So on the morning of the stunt, Good Morning Britain interviewed Tony Aldenshaw, who plays Bob Hope in Emmerdale. He was one of our key celebrity supporters throughout the course of the campaign, but they interviewed him live from site. So that was a great way to kick off the day. We had ITV News at lunchtime coming down to talk to us as well. We had radio come down and talk to us. I think it surpassed all expectations in terms of media reach and targets.
And then how did you capitalise on having all of that incredible media exposure?
The photos that we got and the footage that we got was so impactful. And I think something else that really helped was the great celebrity support to help us really amplify our message. So in addition to Tony Aldenshaw, we had Barbara Flynn, Adil Ray, We also had one of our trustees is Rima Horton, who is Alan Rickman's widow. It was lovely to have her down there speaking to the press as well. Just a great precursor to Marathon Day, and it reminded people of our key messages and our purpose, and it was just a great way to build momentum for the marathon.
Going back to the London Marathon event itself, what lessons did you learn from that process and things that you've picked up that you'd like to take forward for the future? And indeed, how are you going to sustain the momentum for next year's race?
Any project of this scale is going to come with some challenges. And I think for us specifically, it was upscaling our usual operation on such a large level. We've learned how to do things bigger and better. And I think we'll definitely take some of that thinking and some of those learnings and apply them to 2026. And although obviously, sadly, we're no longer Charity of the Year and we've passed that baton on to Marie Curie now, London Marathon is still a huge deal for our organisation, and it's still something that we will throw ourselves into completely. For us, key learnings: stewardship, as we've already touched upon, very tailored, very segmented, data-driven, audience-led. I think that's going to still be a big priority. And I think more generally for our organisation, Shoes of Hope was such a huge success. It was our first ever PR stunt, but definitely not a first and a last. It's doing something on that scale. We've proven that we can do it and proven that we can do it really well. So definitely that's the type of thing that we would do again for another campaign, maybe not specifically for a marathon campaign, but certainly for maybe an integrated campaign, for example.
So as a final question, if there are other charities listening who want to make the most of being part of the London Marathon or other mass participation events, what would your tips for them be?
I would just say make the most of every opportunity that it presents. London Marathon as well is such a phenomenal organisation to work with, and they are so great at supporting not just the Charity of the Year, but their other charities as well. So I would say lean into them if you have questions or if you're not sure about an opportunity and it's something that you would like to discuss with them. So for example, we had a very, very powerful BBC film that was aired on race day. It was an extraordinarily emotive piece of film, but lots of other charities did too. It wasn't just us. So I don't know, maybe think about ways in which you could get some of your case studies who are running as part of your team, the stories that they have to tell. How can you really utilise those stories, get them onto London Marathon's radar and use them to amplify your message?
Well, Vicky, it's been so great to have you with us today to hear about Pancreatic Cancer UK's marathon experience and your incredible achievements. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed our discussion with Vicky, and that's it for this episode. We'll be back next week to warm up for Small Charity Week 2025 as we find out how one small charity has stimulated growth by taking more risks. And just before we go, you might have seen the latest episode of When Charity Goes Wrong on the Third Sector podcast feed. It's the second of 3 parts of our new podcast documentary looking at the Captain Tom Foundation. It features an exclusive interview with Hannah Ingram Moore, Captain Sir Tom's daughter, and Jack Gilbert, who succeeded her as the foundation's chief executive. In this episode, we explore the blurring of the lines between family fortune and charity interests. Do give it a listen. But for now, from the Third Sector podcast team, thank you so much for listening. Our producer is Jude Owen.